In this video, I'm going to beat Pokemon Emerald with only a Manectric. Playthrough rules are in the description. Let's start by breaking down Manectric as a Pokemon. In terms of base stats, it has 70 HP, 75 attack, 60 defense and special defense, and 105 special attack and speed. Put simply, it is a fast special attacker. For today's playthrough, it's going to have a naughty nature, which boosts its attack stat and lowers its special defense stat. I'll go into that decision, or kind of decision, later on in the playthrough, but for now, that's what we're working with. Now, before we move on to the move pool, I just want to draw your attention to the fact that this thing has a slow growth rate. Why does it have a slow growth rate? It is a 2-stage electric type that you can catch before the 3rd gym. And honestly, it's not really anything to write home about in terms of stats. Like, they're pretty good, but it's not amazing. When I started producing this video, my video editor, Juan, chimed in asking why a mediocre 2-stage Pokemon had the slow growth rate. I just said that I had no idea. And then Peep, who manages my credit sequence, came in with an answer that I think is most likely to be correct. He said Arcanine and Houndoom are slow, so maybe it's an elemental dog continuity thing. And I think that that is probably what Game Freak was going for, but it's really disappointing. After all, if you've watched any of my videos before, you will know that the slow growth rate does not perform well in solo challenges. And you know what else doesn't perform well in solo challenges? Electric types. The reason for that tends to be the fact that they don't get access to a lot of good coverage moves, and that is the case for Manectric. It starts with Tackle, Thunderwave, Leer, and Howl. By the way, Howl is a fantastic solo running move, and then through Level Up, it gains access to Quick Attack, Spark, Odor Sleuth, Roar, Bite, Thunder, and Charge. One interaction you might think here that I'm playing around is a Naughty Nature in combination with the move Charge so that I can boost my special defense, but in Generation 3, Charge does not have that secondary effect. It only boosts the next electric type's damage, so it's honestly pretty useless. Why not just attack twice instead of using Charge and then attacking? After all, if you just attack twice, you are more likely to get a critical hit on one of the turns. Through TM and HM, its coverage expands a tiny bit. It gains access to Iron Tail, Thunderbolt, Thunder, Shockwave, and Thief, as well as the standard normal moves in Return, Facade, and Secret Power. For this playthrough, I decided to go with Hidden Power Water just because it pairs really well with Rain Dance as well as Thunder. And finally, there's only one last thing to talk about, which is Manectric's ability. It has a choice between two, either Static or Lightning Rod. Now, I have to actually talk about these abilities in depth because they function quite weirdly in Generation 3. In these games, Lightning Rod does not give an immunity to electric attacks. It doesn't give a plus special attack boost when you get hit by them. Both of those effects were added starting in Generation 5. And making this ability even worse, when the lead Pokemon in your party, which is going to be Manectric throughout this entire challenge, has Lightning Rod, trainers in the overworld are more likely to call you on your phone. I think it's called the match call. Anyways, they're more likely to call you, which really slows playthroughs down. By the way, this feature of Lightning Rod is only in Pokemon Emerald, so yeah, Lightning Rod is definitely not the ability that I'm going to be going for today. Static is far better. After all, it can paralyze ground-type Pokemon, which could be immediately useful because Roxanne is coming up right away. So what is my plan for her? Actually, Editor Scott in here, just briefly before I go through that plan, I need to mention the fact that I did lose to Lady Cindy. It's because she lowered my attack with Growl, so Manectric was doing almost no damage. I tried to counter it with Howl, but then had my defense lowered, and yeah, the Zigzagoon takes me out. A pretty frustrating early loss. With that explained, now let's get back to talking about Roxanne. At this point in the run, it sort of feels like a Pokemon Yellow experience when you have a normal type attacker who's going up against Brock, and you're just going to have to grind for levels in order to have the damage needed to finish him off. That being said, Roxanne is significantly more difficult. Number one, she has same type attack bonus moves in the form of Rock Throw and Rock Tomb, and she also has 3 members on her team, so you need to be able to deal a lot more damage. My assumption for Manectric was that it's going to have to train to at least level 17 to gain access to Quick Attack. This is going to allow me to counter her use of Rock Tomb, so if my speed is lowered, I just really won't care because I have priority. I head into the gym and face the first trainer, and he has level 8 Geodudes on his team, and this confirms that I will not beat her until a higher level. I go and do some training north of the city. I train here until level 18, which is the next damage rounding threshold, and with that, I think it's time to face Roxanne. To start this fight off, I'm using an Oranberry for healing, and that's because I am going to use 3 turns at the beginning of the fight to set up my attack stat using Howl. After that, I've sustained a little bit more than a third in damage, so I decide to start attacking, and I'm only doing roughly a third to the Geodude. I don't think I'm going to be able to get through the fight with these damage ranges. While Manectric does make it to the nose pass, it ends up fainting, so that's my second reset. I figured the solution here was to just get more howls so that I'm doing more damage per turn. In the next fight I go for +6, and this allows me to 2-shot her first Geodude, as well as the second one. However, I am left on orange health for the nose pass. But an interesting interaction here is the fact that my speed stat has been lowered, so I'm now slower than it. That means it's not going to choose Rock Tomb because the AI considers this move to be speed control. As a result, it's going to use Block, Harden, or Tackle, all moves which are not particularly scary. However, she has a lot of healing. The nose pass is holding an Oranberry, and she also has potions. And because of Harden, I start doing less and less damage, and eventually Manectric goes down again. So I think what I need to do is more training. Maybe at level 20 I will be able to defeat her. By the way, this run has already taken a very long time. Last year I played the game with Delibird only. By the way, check that video out if you haven't already seen it. It is by far my hardest Emerald challenge that I have done to date. In that video I similarly had to train a lot for Roxanne. After all, Delibird takes 4 times damage from her rock type moves. Now when I'm doing this kind of training, one thing that can be advantageous is gaining a lot of HP EVs. They're helpful throughout most of the playthrough. It's very hard to optimize for EVs in these solo runs because fighting the optimal Pokemon to gain the EVs you want is really something you can't invest time in outside of some really niche scenarios. In this case, in Rust Turf Tunnel, I can always find Whismurs, which give 1 HP EV, so by fighting only them when I level Manectric up, it is hopefully going to have slightly more health when I head back to face Roxanne. I mentioned this because I was recently discussing with someone with the screen named Roar and the Wolf in my solo running Discord about using stat experience and EVs to try and optimize playthroughs a little bit more. I am thinking about them all the time. There's just very rarely an instance where I want to stop proceeding with the playthrough and do EV training intentionally. This wastes time, and unless the benefit is extreme, I just don't generally think it's worth it. I head back to Roxanne at level 20. Once again, I'm going to set up Howl 6 times and go for the sweep. In this case, the first Geodude goes for a lot of defense curls, so I'm not doing much damage to it. It takes me a total of 4 turns to knock it out, and that is if Roxanne did not use a potion, so it takes even longer. She sends in her next Geodude. However, in this case, I get a critical hit, knocking out in 1 turn. It kind of evens things out. I do have more health left over for the nose pass now, but I also have a complete game changer. At level 20, Manectric was able to learn Spark, and because the nose pass is a mono rock type, I can hit it with this electric type move. It does much more than half. Nose pass eats its berry, goes for tackle, getting a critical hit, but it doesn't matter because Spark hits on the next turn and finishes Roxanne off. And with the first badge, Manectric is going to get a 10% boost to its attack stat. And now I think it is time to talk about my nature, because why would you go for a naughty nature which boosts attack when you're going to get an attack boost right after Roxanne's badge, and your Pokemon is primarily a special attacker? Well, like I said, I wanted the rash nature. However, I've been using a lot of naughty natures in my Emerald playthroughs so far in the year. This nature is fantastic when you have a physical attacking Pokemon. For instance, lowering defense is not a good idea because Steven is mostly a physical attacker and he is by far the hardest trainer in the game. Lowering speed doesn't make a lot of sense because then you might not outspeed a critical opponent and get knocked out as a result. Lowering special attack doesn't always make sense because you might want to have good coverage through, say, hidden power. So what I've been finding is that lowering special defense just seems to make the most sense with almost every Pokemon. So that gives me 2 natures to pick between, Naughty and Rash, Naughty being the physical nature and Rash being the special nature. When I was filming this video, my software was already just set up to have the naughty nature. I thought that I changed it to Rash, but I believe I accidentally changed it in the wrong file. I assumed that it was correct and started the run, and then way later in the run, like I mean close to the Elite Four, I looked down and realized that I had a naughty nature, and my heart just sank. I did pause the run and deeply contemplate if I should just restart. In the end, I decided not to restart. That is because many other Pokemon that are currently ranked in my tier list have awful natures as well. For example, in my Sableye playthrough, I gave it the wrong nature by accident. There's a lot of other playthroughs where I thought I gave the Pokemon the right nature, but it really ended up not being the correct one. Also, the spirit of this playthrough is to do first playthroughs with all the Pokemon and not do subsequent attempts. I felt that if I restarted and changed my nature, I would really change the perception of all of that, just because I had so much experience with Manectric to that point in the game. So I left things as they were, and that's why I have a naughty nature. Let's just continue with the playthrough. I'm sure everyone is going to call me out for this in the comments. Please be kind. I feel really bad about this. Anyways, let's move on. The next gym leader is Brawly. He leads with Machop, I go for Spark, and it gets the one-shot. Alright, that's pretty good. By the way, my Manectric just leveled up to 21. That is the slow growth rate for you, and I also think it's worth noting that there aren't very many trainers between Roxanne and Brawly. You essentially just go right from Roxanne into the second gym. Next is Meditite, it's free, it only has Focus Punch, and then he sends in his ace, Makuhita. I go for Spark, which takes it down to red health. It strikes back with Vital Throw, not doing very much. Static afflicts it, it eats a Citrus Berry, but that isn't enough, and I finish it on the next turn, earning myself the second badge. Outside of the gym, I just want to point out one hidden item for all of you. If you go up here, you can pick up a Heart Scale, which can be nice to use the move reminder later on in the playthrough. It's also not too far off the regular path, so it's convenient to pick up. Then on the Slateport Beach, there is a hidden Ether over here, as well as a hidden Heart Scale just above this trainer. By the way, you need to talk to this Heart Scale from above. You can't pick it up from different angles, it's kind of strange. Following that, I defeat all the trainers here because I want to train as much as possible. After all, Manectric does not really have any good options to take on Watson, who is coming up next. Team Aqua in the museum is very easy. I have a fantastic typing against them. After that, I head north towards the rival battle on Route 110. This is by far the hardest rival battle in the entire game. Notably, I've chosen the female character today just because it makes this battle a little bit easier. Brendan's team is not nearly as good as May's. He leads with a Slugma, and then he has a Wingull. And yeah, I'm just going to one-hit both of them with Spark. After that, he sends in Grovyle, which, by the way, in this sprite really looks like a flying type. It is a grass type though, so Spark is not very effective. It does about a third and causes paralysis. Grovyle goes for Pursuit, doing very little. I hit it with another Spark, it's paralyzed, and I finish it off. So no problems here today for Manectric. Now, surrounding Mauville City, I'm going to gain a lot of experience fighting all of the trainers in this region. There are so many here, and a lot of them you run into when you backtrack through this area of the game after defeating Flannery and Norman. So I always fight them now just so I have the maximum possible level throughout the next section of the game. This does delay Watson, but today I don't think that that's a problem. By the way, you might be thinking that Howl can boost the power of Spark because it's boosting my attack stat, but it's worth noting that in Generation 3, the move's type determines its damage category, so Spark, being an electric type move, is dealing special damage. While I do that training, and since this area of the game is Manectric's habitat, I want to talk about its design. I get what they were going for with all the angular lines, but Jolteon just does that theme better. Look at this thing. Yeah, this thing is intimidating and awesome. Look at this thing. Why is its head a triangle? I'm sure that all the people who love Manectric are also going to come at me in the comments. Yeah, I don't particularly like this thing's design. It really gives me awkward mid-evolution vibes, and that would be fine. I would actually love this thing as a middle stage Pokemon. Electrike is the kind of like cool, cute electric dog, then it evolves into this more awkward electric dog, and then potentially evolves into something that's very fierce and intimidating as its final form. I feel like the Luxray line really gets this right, where Manectric doesn't. Now, they did introduce Mega Manectric in Generation 6, and honestly, I really like its design. I know that this one is not a fan favorite, but I think the idea of turning it into a horizontal lightning bolt is really cool, and I do think that this would be an awesome third stage if only it was just a regular evolution. At this point in the series, it looks like we've sort of lost Mega Evolutions. I don't know if they'll ever reintroduce them. Either way, Manectric ends up being a little bit disappointing as a result, at least in my eyes. Please let me know in the comments if you personally love Manectric. I'm interested to hear why it earned a place in your heart. With all the training surrounding and in the gym completed, my Manectric is now level 30, and I am ready to take on Watson for the first time. I think the approach to this fight is fairly straightforward. Use Howl to set up as much as is possible, and then sweep with Quick Attack. After all, it is neutral against all of the Pokemon except the Magneton. I want to mention that I'm holding a Cherry Berry. That is because electric types can become paralyzed in all generations before Generation 6. You actually see that here where I Quick Attack the Electrike, knock it out, and then paralysis gets inflicted with status. My Cherry Berry cures it, and Watson sends in Magneton next. Against it, Spark has a higher effective power, so that's what I'm going for here. Plus the Magneton has good physical defenses. I'm able to take it down to low health with only 2 hits. Also I got paralysis, which is nice, but it was able to get it against me as well. Watson uses a super potion. I take it back down to red health. He uses another super potion, and as a result I thought I was going to lose, but I do manage to take the Magneton out by using Quick Attack on the final turn. I think that this move was probably the better choice. He sends in his Manectric next. I go for Quick Attack, which does massive damage, but it survives with a sliver of health, and goes for its own Quick Attack, which doesn't knock my Manectric out, but paralysis activates, I don't move, and it takes me out on the next turn. Okay, so that fight was really close. I attempted again. This time the Magneton takes me out. I come back, this time preserving my Cherry Berry so that I don't get paralyzed against the Magneton on the first turn. As a result, it goes for Thunder Wave one more time, and I'm able to finish it off, sustaining significantly less damage. I get paralyzed turn 1 against his Manectric. It goes for Howl, and then my next Quick Attack gets a critical hit, and with that, I've earned myself the 3rd badge. The price for this victory is Shockwave, and that puts me in a bit of a weird position. If I teach it over Spark, I get better accuracy, but I get lower effective power. I really don't want to give up Howl. It is going to be by far my best move throughout this entire run, and Quick Attack is currently the move that pairs well with it. I think in retrospect, I might have been able to give up Thunder Wave here, but I always like having this as an option just in case I need to cut speed or consistency to get through a tough fight. So in the end, I decided to teach Shockwave over Spark, but in retrospect, I think that teaching it over Thunder Wave was the correct choice. While I was doing this playthrough, I did realize this. I end up teaching Secret Power in the place of Thunder Wave, so I could have had Spark in the place of Quick Attack, but I guess priority can be helpful. That is, if Manectric is not moving first, and it should probably be moving first. After all, Watson's badge did give me a 10% boost to my already incredible speed stat. The next major battle in the run is against Maxie at the top of Mount Chimney. Here he leads with a Mightyena, which immediately intimidates Manectric, lowering my attack stat. I go for Shockwave, almost taking it out. He uses a super potion, and I finish it on the next turn. Okay, so Zubat's next. Obviously this one's going to be a one-hit, but what about the Camerupt? It is a ground type. As a result, I'm forced into Secret Power here, and the Camerupt is able to hit me with Magnitude 6, taking Manectric just under half health. Secret Power hits again, taking it to orange health. Magnitude takes me to red. I go for Secret Power one more time. It did not look like I had the range, but I do, so I've defeated Maxie. I grab the Meteorite, backtrack to Fall Arbor Town, pick up the TM for return, and I teach it in the place of Secret Power. With that out of the way, let's take on Flannery, the Fire-type specialist. She leads with Numble, and despite it being a ground type, I am really not worried about it. I'm going to set up here with Howl a little bit. Once I have +2, I've taken about half damage, so I figure I should start my sweep now. I finish the Numble in a single turn. I level up here. By the way, this always shocks me in Generation 2 and 3. I think to myself like, oh no, I leveled up in the middle of the battle. And then I remember, this is not how badge boosts work after Generation 1. So yeah, there's no negative effect here. I move on to the Camerupt after knocking the Slugma out. I go for Return, which finishes her penultimate Pokemon off with a single hit. And now it is time for the Torkoal. This thing is a defensive beast, so I decided to go for Shockwave, which is the special move. Torkoal misses Overheat, which is good for me, and as a result I finish it off, earning myself the 4th gym badge. Backtracking to Norman, I stop by the flower shop. This lady appears outside, by the way. If you talk to the first person within the shop, you can talk to her and get the White Herb, which is a fantastic item to use during the Elite Four. With that item in my bag, I head back to Petalburg City in order to face Norman. First he sends in Spinda. I can set up Howl here once, because I do have a Person Berry. I remembered to pick them up after Fall Arbor Town. I'm pretty proud of myself for doing that. It has taken far too long to add that into my Emerald route. Now, despite setting up with Howl, I did go for Shockwave against the Spinda, which is objectively the wrong choice. All of its stats are balanced. Kind of makes sense due to the theme of the Pokemon, but I really should have gone for the physical move. That would have allowed me to one-hit. Because I didn't, I get caught in Teeter Dance, and yeah, Manectric knocks itself out, so that's frustrating. In the next fight, for whatever reason, I go for Shockwave again. I need to stop doing this. It is painful watching this footage. I do manage to take it out. Next comes in Vigoroth, which I two-shot using Shockwave. Then I do the same to Linoon. I have just above half health when the Slacking comes out, and I was feeling pretty good about things here. I go for Shockwave, doing about a third. Slacking uses Facade, taking me down to red health, and then Static paralyzes it. Okay, that's not a good interaction. Facade is going to hit way harder now. I'm not able to get a critical hit, so I'm going to have to try this fight again. This time I revert to my original strategy, setting up once with Howl, and I make it back to the slacking with a similar amount of health. Turn 1 I go for Shockwave in case it uses counter. I really do not want to be using a physical move against it. Then on the turn that it's loafing around, I can use Return for more damage. It heals itself with a Citrus Berry, and while I do get one more return in, it is not enough, and once again slacking defeats Manectric. I went back and fought some of the additional trainers in the gym just to gain a little bit of experience, but due to my slow growth rate, I'm not going to be able to level up again unless I go all the way back to Flannery's area of the game. Okay, so I'm going to try a completely different approach. Holding the Silk Scarf, I am just going to set up against the Spinda and hope that I don't knock myself out with Confusion. Once I get to +3, I go for Return, and I knock his lead out. Okay, so I was able to luck through the Confusion. That's very good. This allows me to one-shot both the Vigoroth and the Linoon and make it back to the slacking. Turn 1, I go for Shockwave, once again just in case of counter, and this time it does go for it, so I'm lucky there. After that, I go for Return, which takes the slacking down to red health. It consumes its Citrus Berry, but I'm faster, and I'm able to knock it out on the next turn. Okay, so with the 5th badge, I can now use Surf outside of battle, and now I have access to New Mauville. I can go through here, press the button. I forget if I'm turning the generator on or off. Either way, I fix the situation, and then I head back to Watson and grab the TM for Thunderbolt. I teach it in the place of Quick Attack, and then proceed towards Fort Tree City. Along the way, I crush the Team Aqua members in the Weather Institute. I get the cast form here, which is holding the Mystic Water. I'm mentioning that item just because I do have Hidden Power Water, so it could be relevant later on. After that, I completely stomp the rival. On the next mandatory battle, Manectric levels up and it has the chance to learn Bite. I considered teaching this for coverage, but in the end I decided not to. Thunderbolt already decently covers all of Tate and Liza's Pokemon, and I really want to hold on to Shockwave until I get to Sidney. I need a way to play around his sand attacks as well as his evasion boosting strategies. Okay, so now let's see how Manectric fares against Winona. Of all the gyms so far, this one should be the most straightforward. I one-shot the Swablu. She sends in Altaria next, which is taking neutral damage from electric moves. It goes for Dragon Dance, uses its Oran Berry. Yes, it does have an Oran Berry, I did not misspeak there. I finish it on the next turn, one-shot the Skarmory, move on to the Tropius, which really isn't much of a threat. Its move pool is just not very good. After that, I one-shot the Pelipper and earn myself an easy 6th badge. The next battle that could potentially be challenging for Manectric is the battle against Maxi in the Magma hideout. I take my time against the first Mightyena, setting up to +4 attack. I really wanted to ensure that I was going to one-hit the Camerupt, but then it moves first because I had my Speed Lord by Scary Face twice, allowing it to deal massive damage with Earthquake, and I don't even make it to the final Crobat. In the next fight I take the same strategy again, and it does not play out well for me. I just want to note a funny fact in this fight, that my speed is 42 after -4. Yeah, the Camerupt speed is 43. It is literally moving first by 1 speed. Setting up here is just not the right choice though. I decided that the path forward was to teach Hidden Power Water in the place of Howl. After all, I'm going to be able to get this setup move back later on through the move reminder. This way, I can just go for Thunderbolt right away on the Mightyena, knocking it out in a single turn, and then I can continue spamming Thunderbolt and accidentally do nothing to the Camerupt while it sets up Amnesia. Okay, that's frustrating. Hidden Power Water does not knock it out, but it goes for Amnesia again. I hit 2 additional times while Maxi heals it with a potion, but I'm faster, so I hit it a 3rd time and it goes down. Last is Crobat, which I easily dispatch with a single Thunderbolt. I finish off the Team Aqua hideout, head into Shoal Cave, where I grab myself the Shell Bell, and then I fight my way through trainers over to Pacifidlog Town just so I have this fly point for later on in the story. This is another area like Watson where I like to do the training now rather than doing it later on, and I think their battle is the 2nd most difficult one of all of the gym leaders. I used to say it was the most difficult, but I have reevaluated that. I do think that Watson is the most difficult. Well, let's see how Manectric can do against them. I go for Hidden Power Water against the Claydol in hopes that I'll knock it out and prevent its Earthquake, but I only do half and it still hits, doing more than half to Manectric. I finish it on the next turn, they send in Lunatone, Xatu sets up Calm Mind, and then I target it down with Thunderbolt so that it can't set up anymore. Lunatone sets up Calm Mind, so I guess I should target it now. I really should have used Hidden Power Water, but even with that, I don't think I would have got the knockout. Lunatone uses Psychic, and I'm going to have to try this fight again. This time I focused on the Lunatone instead of the Xatu. Either way, it doesn't end well for me. and I think here Manectric is going to need more levels. Luckily for it, it is super effective against water-type Pokemon, and there are way too many of them in these games. As a result, Manectric's slow growth rate is sort of offset by the fact that I am one-hitting almost every Pokemon I face. I come back to face Tate and Liza at level 50. I tried 2 more attempts, but both of them end in defeat when I'm using the Shell Bell, and so I think it might be time to use some rare candies to try to make this fight a little bit easier. I use a total of 5, and then attempt again. While this does mean the Claydol is not going to two-shot me with Earthquake, it still does not give me the one hit with Hidden Power Water. And then because of Calm Mind setup, either the Xatu does a lot of damage to me, or I'm not able to knock out the Lunatone. With 2 more losses, I decided it is time to train, and I basically have to go back throughout the entire game and just scour the region for trainers, because it really takes a lot of experience to level up more. Because I tried this fight at level 55, I know that I'm going to need a higher level, so I'm going to overtrain right now. I come back and face them at level 57 using no rare candies, so that is an advantage. Finally, I am able to one-shot the Claydol and prevent Earthquake, and that really changes the math in this fight. Then, I can one-shot the Xatu. After that, I thought that I would two-shot the Lunatone, but it sets up again, survives, I get burned, and things just sort of fall apart, and I have another loss. Assuming that was bad luck, I try again. This time I get a significantly worse damage roll against the Claydol. It survived with a lot of health. I know that Tate and Liza are going to heal it with a full restore, so I go for Thunderbolt on the Xatu to knock it out. I reroll damage against the Claydol, and once again it survives. Fine, so that's another loss. I had 1 more loss, and with it I was feeling very dejected. To continue my training, I have to fight trainers before Fort Tree City. I hope you understand that their levels are starting to get a little bit lower, so I'm really not gaining that much experience. While I was doing this training, I figured out a potentially alternative strategy, which is a little bit weird. If I go to the move reminder, I can teach Manectric Bite. By the way, I'm teaching it in the place of Return, just because Return isn't fairly useful against Tate and Liza, and there is an additional Return TM that I picked up in Pacific Log Town. Now the reason Bite has the potential to be good here is number 1, it's super effective. While it won't do as much damage as Thunderbolt or Hidden Power Water, it does have a 30% chance to cause a flinch. So if I assume that I'm not going to get a one hit, going for Bite on the first turn could prevent them from using one move. I get very lucky in the first fight because my Bite crits, knocking the Claydol out in a single hit. Okay, so that is definitely what I need. Next they send in Lunatone. I go for Thunderbolt against the Xatu, knocking it out as well. That is more good news. Then I use the Bite strategy against the Lunatone, which doesn't cause a flinch, but that's okay because I am able to finish it off on the next turn. Bite doing less damage there was an advantage because the Lunatone consumed its Citrus Berry, meaning Tate and Liza did not use a full restore on it, and then I can knock it out on the next turn. Okay, so only Soul Rock is left. I go for Thunderbolt, doing massive damage to it, and it faints to a single hit. So at long last, Tate and Liza are defeated, and with their badge, I gain a 10% boost to my special attack and special defense stats. There's some plot stuff next, and while it all happens, let's quickly check in with the results. Right now, Manectric is over 2 hours and 20 minutes into this playthrough, and it has 20 resets. So as expected with this electric type, things are not going very well. That said, there are 2 prominent trainers that have water-type Pokemon in the late game. And there is actually a 3rd water-type trainer who is Archie, but yeah, he's not going to be a problem. I just one-shot all of his Pokemon with Thunderbolt, and with that I have made it to Juan. So is it possible for Manectric to even lose here? I just one-shot the Love Disc with Thunderbolt. Next he sends in Whiscash. Of course I'm going too fast, so Thunderbolt does nothing to it, and it sets up Amnesia. Yeah, that's a little bit annoying. I guess I'm going to have to use Bite against this thing, or Hidden Power Water. I think Hidden Power Water is probably the better choice for damage, but Bite does have a chance to flinch. Now, because of my misplay on turn 1, the Whiscash was able to get set up, and so then it starts attacking with Earthquake, and yes, Manectric takes a loss. Don't worry though, in the next fight I teach Return in the place of Hidden Power Water, and with this move I can two-shot the Whiscash, even if it sets up Amnesia, and move on to the rest of Juan's team. Thunderbolt one-shots the Celio and the Crawdaunt, and I make it to his ace, Kingdra. Due to Swift Swim, it moves first, and it's able to hit a Water Pulse, but this isn't enough. I finish it off over the following turns and earn myself the 8th and final badge. Wally's before the league, and he's not a problem at all. With him out of the way though, I do backtrack to the game corner. This is so I can buy another Thunderbolt TM. By doing this, I can use the move reminder to delete Thunderbolt and gain access to Howl again. I think this setup move is going to be critical to my success in the league, so now let's see how it goes. Sidney is first, and this one is a kind of weird case. I could use the white herb to prevent the attack drop and then set up with Howl, but he's probably going to sand attack me and set up double team anyways. Because of this, I decided to spam Shockwave throughout this fight. Of course, it's very annoying against the grass types who resist this move. Notably though, the Shift Tree does use Swagger against me, boosting my attack stat. I guess that's nice for me, but it's not really going to be that useful. I don't want to miss, and because of Sand Attack, I have -1 accuracy. I take out the following Cacturn slowly, move on to the Crawdont, which I can easily one-shot. The Shell Bell is very nice in instances like that, because I'm gaining back a decent amount of health. Absol misses Rock Slide. I hit it with Shockwave, doing more than half. While it eats its Citrus Berry and does hit Rock Slide, it's not enough, and I finish it on the next turn. Now, teaching Howl in the place of Thunderbolt gives me access to Bite against Phoebe. I do want you to note here on the first turn I go for Howl, which isn't actually useful against her. However, it means that Pressure isn't going to lower Bite's PP. There is sometimes the fear that you run out during Phoebe, so that's why I did this play. I finished the first Dusclops off in 2 hits, the second one comes out, and it does no Earthquake. Even with this incredible super effective move, it isn't going to be doing much though because it has a low attack stat. My bites aren't doing much either, so she's able to hit me with 2 Earthquakes before I finish her ace off. Next is Bayonet. I was hoping for a 1-hit with Bite, but I don't get it. As a result, I take a little bit more damage before the Sableye comes out. It loves to use double team, so I'm going to use Shockwave to finish it off. I am successful in this effort, and I move on to the final Bayonet, which I one-shot with Bite. Okay, so Glacia is next. Yeah, this one's going to be easy. I can Thunderbolt to 1-hit the first Celio, 2-hit the following Glalie. She does use a full restore, but it doesn't matter. I 1-hit the next Celio, 2-hit the following Glalie, once again full restore, so technically a 3-hit, and then her ace Walrein is an easy 1-hit with Thunderbolt. Manectric didn't even break a sweat there, but now I have to take on Drake, and this one could be a little bit more complicated. Bite is no longer useful, so I've taught Rest in its place, and I've also given Manectric the White Herb. This is so I can take my time against the Shelgon while it uses Protect and Rock Tomb to set up with Howl to boost my attack stat. In this case, the White Herb is serving as a counter to Rock Tomb's speed drop. I really want to ensure that I'm outspeeding the rest of his Pokemon once I decide to sweep. While I did prepare very diligently for this, the Shelgon really drops the ball. It just uses a lot of Protect and then Dragon Claw. Then it misses a Rock Tomb, and I get set up to +6 attack before I finally have my speed dropped and I burn the White Herb. Obviously now is the time to sweep. Return 1 hits the Shelgon, 1 hits the Flygon, 1 hits the Altaria, 1 hits the Kingdra, and despite Intimidate, 1 hits the Salamence. So Manectric gets a clean sweep against the Elite Four. Let's see if it can keep this going against Wallace. This fight seems theoretically straightforward. I'm just going to sweep with Thunderbolt using Return to knock out the Whiscash. That is not how things play out in reality. After defeating the Wailord, Wallace sends in Gyarados, which triggers Intimidate, lowering my attack stat. I'm able to knock the Gyarados out in a single hit, and then he sends in Whiscash, and Return is quite frankly doing pathetic damage. Because the Waterground Fish knows Earthquake, it strikes back, and it is able to finish Manectric off. I know that I used Thunderbolt there by accident, but either way it wasn't going to matter. I would have had to get a massive critical hit, and even then I think the Whiscash would have survived. I tried setting up on the Wailord without damaging it, but Water Spout just 1 hits? That is not a good choice either. In the next battle it misses Blizzard, giving me 1 turn of free setup. I figured this countered out the Intimidate, so let's try to sweep now. Then against the Whiscash, I'm still not doing damage particularly quickly, but I am able to take it out with half health remaining. Next is Tentacruel. I go for Thunderbolt, but this thing has massive special defense. As a result, it survives, hits Hydro Pump, taking Manectric down to red health. Wallace uses a full restore, healing it. He actually uses a second and third one, healing it 2 more times, but eventually I get a critical hit and finish it off. Then he sends in Ludicolo. Thunderbolt does half, it sets up double team. I miss, it goes for Surf, taking Manectric to red health, and then I knock it out on the next turn. But if the Melodic is able to survive, I am going to lose. And it does. So that's another loss. The simple solution here is to use Rare Candies. I'm going to use 6 of them to take Manectric up to level 70. This feels fairly safe since I'm so close to the end of the game anyways. At this level, the Whiscash is still a 3-hit, just barely by the way. And now because my damage ranges are better and I'm taking the Whiscash to low health, Wallace is choosing to heal it with full restore, which makes the fight harder for me. It is a rare scenario when you level up and the battle becomes more difficult. I'm not able to take it out, and it finishes me, so I guess I should use some more rare candies to go up from level 70 to level 76. This depletes my entire reserve. Now the Whiscash is a 2-hit, I can 1-hit the following Tentacruel, and I crit the Ludicolo, finishing it in a single turn as well. So I have full health for the Milotic. This is obviously a victory. Thunderbolt hits, and it finishes Wallace's ace off. As an electric type, I expected the champion battle to be a little bit easier. That being said, I do think there's some updates to my play that I could have made to make things easier on myself. For example, I could have used Return on turn 1 to cut the power of Water Spout, and then set up with Howl. For any of you who are wondering, I filmed this run on August 8th, so it is quite old by the time that I'm filming this voiceover, which is on November 2nd. If you wonder why I do this all so far in advance, it is largely because we need time to produce these videos, and with the amount of releases that are happening right now in December for all of you, I had to plan ahead, otherwise it just wouldn't be possible. With the league behind me, there is only one more trainer the Manectric has to face. It's time for Steven Stone. For this fight, you'll notice that I've updated my moveset. I now have Thunderbolt, Rest, Hidden Power Water, and Rain Dance. I one-shot the Skarmory with Thunderbolt, next he sends an Aggron. I chanced things here and I went for Rain Dance because I want maximum damage against the following Pokemon. I take a massive Earthquake as a result and finish it off. Next he sends in his Ace Metagross. For maximum damage, I go for Thunderbolt. I get a critical hit. However, it still survives. It retaliates with Psychic and Manectric goes down. I try again setting up Rain Dance on the Skarmory this time and then knocking it out, as well as the Aggron. Then, against the Metagross, I'm just barely not able to get the 2-hit with Thunderbolt, so it is able to finish me with Earthquake. As I head back to train to get better damage ranges against his ace, I want to bring us back to the idea of my nature. If I had a rash nature, I am 100% sure that I would be 2-hitting the Metagross, and that would change everything. So with that in mind, let's go back to the fight at level 78 and see if I can 2-hit. And the answer is yes. However, I survived with only 19 hit points. Next he sends in Claydol, which is very unfortunate because it knows Earthquake. I go for Hidden Power Water to see how much damage I have, but it looks like less than half. I'm not even guaranteed to get to the Claydol because I don't always 2-hit the Metagross. Sometimes the Skarmory badly poisons me, and if I'm using a Chesto Berry to solve things later in the fight, then I have to reset here. And I tried again, but the Metagross once again defeats me. I train a bit, head to the department store, pick up the TM for Thunder. I really hope I'm not going to have to use this, by the way. Then I go to the Safari Zone where I pick up an additional rare candy, and finally to the SS Title to pick up the leftovers. By the way, I think a lot of you don't know that these are available here, so yeah, they're in this trash can. I come back at level 80, and now I'm doing more damage to the Metagross, which you'd think is good, but once again this makes the fight harder, because now it heals with a Citrus Berry. So either I need to be at the lower level with less of a chance to knock it out, or I need to be at a higher level to ensure that I'm going to get the 2-hit after the Citrus Berry. By the way, I really did not want to accept this as reality, so I tried using Thunder, and no, Thunder is not the answer. So I guess I have to go and train again. There are a lot of trainers that I skipped in Victory Road who I can go and defeat now for decent experience yields. Also, you can defeat Wally multiple times after you take on the League, so I'm going to do that for additional experience. I take Manectric up to level 83, and then I go back to the move reminder to teach an absolutely silly move. In the place of Thunderbolt, I put Roar. What I was thinking of doing here against Steven is defeating the Metagross as usual, then using Rest with a Chesto Berry to heal on the Claydol, and roaring it out after that so that I no longer have to face it. But there is a flaw in this plan, and I don't know if you know it, but Roar has lower priority. So if you use this move even with a Pokemon with incredible speed like Manectric, you are not going to move first, and the Claydol is able to knock me out. There's an alternative play here, which is roaring out the Skarmory and trying to drag in a different Pokemon, like for instance this Armaldo. I go for Thunder against it and it doesn't knock out. Steven uses a full restore, I Thunder it again, I have to use Rest, uses Ancient Power. I do take it out and the fight actually goes decently well. I'm able to finish off the Aggron, the Metagross, as well as the Skarmory, all using Thunder. This brings me back to the Claydol, and I had a terrible realization here, which is, what is my plan against this thing? I have to stall it out with Rest and knock it out with Struggle. That is obviously not going to work, so this strategy is just bad. As a result, I head back to my former strategy of using Hidden Power for his team, and in the next fight, I get incredibly lucky with a critical hit against the Claydol using Hidden Power Water. That finishes it for the first time. So, can I get by the Cradily as well as the Armaldo? I try to take things slow on the Cradily, but due to confusion, it is eventually able to knock me out. A few fights later, I crit the clay doll again, which appears to be my win condition. Note now that the timer is over 3 hours and 30 minutes. This is really not going well. What I said before about having better damage ranges if my nature was different is true to some extent, but it doesn't really help with the clay doll. I even chose a good hidden power typing to counter the clay doll, and I am still struggling. So what is the answer going to end up being? And I hate to say this, but we're going to go back to bite strategies. It does super effective damage to the clay doll, plus having the chance to flinch. On the Skarmory, I set up Rain Dance, knocking it out with Thunder, as well as the following aggron. Against the Metagross, I thought that I could go for Bite and then follow it up by Thunder, but it just barely survives on a tiny bit of HP. So what I should do instead is just use Thunder against the Metagross right away. I get lucky with a critical hit, and then all of you need to check out what happens against the clay doll. I go for Bite, which does about half, and then it sets up Light Screen, which is going to have the damage from Bite. As a result, it would take me 3 more bites to knock the clay doll out. It sets up Reflect, then I flinch it. Steven uses a full restore, so I get a bite in for free. Then my next bite flinches it. My next one hits after the light screen, dealing massive damage, causing another flinch. Steven uses a second full restore. I bite for free, taking it down to around half. And then my final bite gets a critical hit, finishing the clay doll off. This might be the luckiest knockout I have ever gotten. I could not believe it. While I was playing this fight, I was 100% sure that I was just going to have to level up more to get better damage ranges and come back to the fight with, say, Hidden Power Water. As a result of that incredible luck, I make it to the Cradily with green health. Unfortunately against it, I do not really have a good option. Thunder does do the most damage, so I'm trying to go for it, but eventually I do have to use Rest to heal. Luckily for me, I still have my Chesto Berry because things have gone so well in this fight. From there, I can use Bite a lot to cause more flinches. Cradily confuses me, it's really back and forth for a while. I heal, but eventually I do manage to knock it out. So, Steven only has 1 Pokemon left. Please, let this be it. I establish Rain Dance, Armaldo goes for Ancient Power, doing about a quarter, Static paralyzes it, I go for Thunder, which takes it to red, then it crits with Ancient Power. And Manectric survives on 24 hit points, but Steven uses a full restore. My next Thunder takes it back down to red health, uses another full restore, trying to stall my Rain out. However, he doesn't have another one, and as a result, I hit Thunder and take the Armaldo down. So I clock in with a final first playthrough time with Manectric of 3 hours, 34 minutes, and 54 seconds. This is with 57 resets at level 83, and with a game time of 11 hours and 17 minutes. So let's rank Manectric in the real-time tier list. In this case, it has one of the worst times that I have got yet, and it is by far the most recent playthrough that I have done of the bottom-ranked Pokemon. It is slightly slower than Jirachi and Swampert, but significantly faster than both Luvdisc and Delibird. Honestly, going into this run, I thought it wasn't going to be great. However, it ended up being a lot worse than I was expecting. That being said, if we take a lot of the player error out of the results and rank it based on game time, nothing changes. It is still ranked lower than Swampert, Jirachi, Shiftry, Sceptile, and Tropius, and only ahead of Luvdisc, Delibird, and Butterfree. Of course, in a second playthrough, I would get a much better time with this thing. That being said, all of the other Pokemon that I just mentioned, I would also get better times with. So right now, I think that Manectric is destined to perform poorly in Generation 3. At least as a solo run Pokemon. Of course, that's always how I'm examining Pokemon on my channel. This thing obviously could be fantastic as a part of your team during a casual playthrough. I think that electric types in general work better with other Pokemon, and they really struggle when left on their own. So that's it for today's video, but don't worry, tomorrow there is going to be another one. In it, I'm going to see how fast I can beat Pokemon Emerald with only a Medicham. I am beyond excited for this run because so many people have told me in the comments that Medicham is a beast in Emerald. And tomorrow we are going to find out if that's true. If you made it this far in the video, you are incredible. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.